Welcome to the Seed Your Head podcast, a co-production of Seed Cannabis Market and Core Cannabis Museum, where we dig deep and explore all things cannabis. In each episode, we'll plant seeds of knowledge, cultivate a deeper understanding of cannabis, and along the way, we'll have some fun. I'm Lee Juan, and in this episode, we'll be diving into the ups and downs of the legal cannabis industry in Massachusetts, exploring the motivation behind being an operator in this evolving space. I'm joined by Bob Patton, a descendant of the renowned World War II officer George S. Patton, and one of the founders of Green Meadows, a vertically integrated cannabis company in Mass. As we delve into his insights, we'd also like to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude and say thank you to veterans, those actively serving, and their families for the sacrifices they have made in service to our country. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for joining me. So I wanted to start with asking you to tell me a little bit about Green Meadows today.
You got it. Well, again, as Bob Patton, I was sort of the representative in the family to kind of absorb the story of my father and mother's organic produce farm, which my father started in 1980 after he retired from the Army after 34 years of service. And of all things, here's this kind of crusty, kind of right-wing guy from the military. And he said, you know what, I'm going to go into farming. So he did with this land that he had up north of Boston. And then of all things, and this is my dad, I'm also going to get into organic farming and sustainable agriculture. I said, who is this guy, right? But we began to sort of, as a family, sort of get into that. And when we decided to get into cannabis as a family, which is a story unto itself, but we really did kind of have a kitchen table meeting and say, are we going to go in? We did, and I was the old sort of the old son in the room. My father had passed, but my mother was still part of the scene. And we talked as a family, my kids, my siblings, and my mother in her 80s, and said, are we going to take the farm into cannabis? And we did. And so my job, quote unquote, is to go around and just be myself and tell the story of what the family is about, what our values are, and what we try to do as a business, which we want to do well at, but also we want to do a little good along the way. And that's kind of what I'm trying to represent here.
That's awesome. And now, so for those of people that don't know, you are a direct descendant of General Patton, correct?
I am indeed. Accident of birth, I always like to say. And I'm not a veteran myself. I came close. I did a couple of years of ROTC while I was at college, but then after that second year, you have to commit. But it is part of the DNA. My grandfather, on my father's side, was George S. Patton Jr. Of World War II fame. He died in 1945, so I never knew him personally. I do know a lot about him. In my former life, before cannabis, I was a writer, and my first book was actually a family memoir. And as you can imagine, he was the 600-pound gorilla in the middle of the story. But then my dad carried that forward. He also was a general, 2-star. So it is part of what I have absorbed, and we do try to carry that forward in our consciousness of veterans, our consciousness of what we owe veterans historically and in the present day, and that relationship with my grandfather and with my father. And again, I'm sort of the black sheep. I have so many cousins that were West Pointers or Annapolis grads or enlisted and served, and so it really is just part of the family trade, but now we've added a new family trade, and it's called cannabis.
Hey, and it helps veterans too.
It's something that we're really aware of. Obviously, we support the research, and a lot of it's anecdotal now, but very much from the beginning. My younger brother and younger sister started nonprofit foundations. My sister lives in Europe most of the time. She married a German, and so she began getting involved with the Greatest Generation and sort of the older soldiers and vets and their families coming to see the European battlefields, the Normandy beaches, that kind of thing. And she was organizing tours and helping them get there for those sort of last family trips to those battlefields, sort of for the the old patriarchs of the families. Whereas my younger brother started something called Patton Veterans Project, and he deals very much with recently deployed and post-deployment, post-retirement soldiers, men and women of all uniforms, all branches, that are going through some issues, whether in their families or in their personal life or with addiction to opioids or whatever it may be, and sort of finding where cannabis, he's not specifically cannabis oriented, but very much aware of this is something that should be added to the kind of the toolbox of remedies and therapies. That's where I'm at with cannabis and veterans. When I speak to veterans groups, the first thing I say is this isn't the answer to everything, but it surely should be part of the menu that you can call upon and see if it works for you. And that's really what we're trying to do as a family, to move that part of the discussion of cannabis forward. Put it in the mix of possibilities for people, because we know that it really does help.
Yeah, and I mean, cannabis isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of for everyone, especially now that we learn more. Terpenes can affect people a little bit differently. I believe some of the studies on pinene say that they can be bad for people with PTSD.
Yes.
So as we learn more about that, it can kind of help guide people in the right direction, but definitely having a tool, having the option available, opposed to things that have been available.
That's really the argument that we make, and even among, so let's say military doctors, Veterans Administration, therapists and physicians, many of them, I won't say all by any means, but many of them will understand and say, we can't prescribe it necessarily, but we also can say wink, wink, nod, nod. If you want to find access to legal cannabis that's tested, they can tell their patients, maybe give it a try on maybe some of these CBD, THC combinations where you can get some of the CBD, positive effects mixed with whatever the THC can do as far as maybe, helping steady your mind or your aches and pains or whatever it could be. And again, it's not for everyone, and I wish there was more research, and it will come, where eventually you'll be able to say, yes, this strain and these particular terpenes, these will help with your anxiety or your panic attack, or help you relax with your kids and maybe get down on the floor and play with them, whereas now you're just sort of feel isolated from them. So whatever it might be, we're not physicians.
Yep.
None of our right, and at our dispensaries, our GSAs as we call them, bud tenders,
Yep.
we make sure they don't represent themselves as physicians, but they're very free with what we understand anecdotally from our staff. I mean, we have about 15% of our entire company is veterans.
That's awesome.
They're great. It goes up and down a little bit. People turn over and all the rest. But first of all, veterans are awesome anyway, because they're collaborative and they're accountable and they want to work with others, and they share their experiences, but not in sort of an overt way. And we just find them to be an absolute blessing when we have them on the team. So when we do talk with folks that want to come in, if they're veterans or just looking for medical advice, I wish I could say this one will do this for you. But what we do instead is our staff, or many other patients or clients that come in have said, this is a particularly good one for this particular ailment that maybe you're suffering. And it might just be pain. It might just be they need to, have little, like me, I'm getting up there, all my joints talk to me in the morning, and a little bit of CBD can go a long way, or a 1-to-1, something like that.
For sure. And I mean, I know even when I find myself on a POS, sometimes I find myself saying, hey, this isn't medical advice. However, a majority of people have said, or research has been indicating that, just because you really have to make sure we're not giving medical advice, because it's not there yet.
Yeah.
But one day, fingers crossed.
And the other side of that equation is, again, we, for those who are coming in regularly to our dispensaries, we want feedback from them. So we encourage our staff to ask, hey, I see last time you were here, you got this. How did that work out for you? And if it was crap, we want to know.
Yeah.
And if it was really good, we want to know. And we will try to adjust and learn. Also, when people give their reviews, sometimes and I'm happy to say they're all really, really good. Now and then we get a bad one, and I say that one must, like 1 in 100 or whatever. And I say, I'm going to hunt that person down and find out what our problem was. But fortunately, we don't have that problem very often at all. But again, it's just a matter of educating, first of all, ourselves, talking to folks like you that have been in the industry that know, talking to other dispensaries, other wholesalers, what's working, what are people giving you as feedback, and we look for that from all of our clients and our patients as well. Please tell us whether it's a Green Meadows product or someone else's that you need to have more of or less of, and we'll take it from there. So it's very much a two-way street.
That's awesome, because it really means you want to, what works best for your consumers, and what's popular. And I mean, there's always that small percentage of people that get a little bit of an adverse effect to something different from the majority, but that's also good to know, because then if especially if it's a GSA and they have a customer that comes in on a regular basis and they know hey, this person usually has the opposite reaction of everyone else.
Right.
And I know this opposite reaction happens because this is what someone else has said.
Right.
They can then kind of, gear that person the correct route that would work best for them.
And just as you say, person to person, we have these sort of blanket generalities. Well, there's indica, and that's going to kind of relax you, slow you down. And then there's sativa, that's going to be an up. And then we know that an indica for one person might do something quite different as that same indica for another. That body chemistry and all the things that differentiate, God love us all as people, are also going to have a manifestation in their reactions to different kinds of, cannabis products. So it is as they said, that old expression, the industry is kind of building the plane as we're flying it, but nevertheless, the plane is still aloft, and we're working to keep it so.
We might get a little lost sometimes, but we keep it back on course eventually.
Yeah, it's all perfect all the time, of course. No, it's part of the adventure / white hair and anxiety and again wonder of this industry and this particular plant. I, who was just I come out of the pre-legalization days of my youth, and now to have this product that's working its way to become almost not boring, it never will be that, but just a part of lifestyles, and you integrate it, and our motto is to make lives better, improve lives, whatever it may be, and cannabis should be a part of that for folks that want it to be.
Yeah. No, completely agree with you. And what would you say your perspective is? I know that, veterans, if they work in the cannabis industry, they can face some issues getting certain benefits and services. I know the first dispensary I worked at, there were a few employees that were worried about getting, I think it was with the GI Bill when it came to housing, and that they might not be able to get that anymore because of that. Have you seen that adjust at all? Or what are your...
Well, first of all, everyone that we speak to, particularly those that are leading veterans groups in cannabis, are very well versed in all of that and know where kind of the front is as far as the battles that need to be waged. I say battles in quotes there, but nevertheless, am I an expert on all this? I don't want to claim to be. So, but what I do know that it's part of every conversation now, and that's where I say I know so many veterans that say in the beginning the VA was just a dispenser of opioids, pretty much, and now there is much more of a conversation going on even within the traditionalists in the VA that if the goal is to help veterans of all ages and all kind of personal conflicts that they're going through, again, to be able to add cannabis and not to adversely affect their business lives, their private lives, whatever it may be. And so whatever those things where they can kind of enter into your personal record, and because we'll have people come, who's going to know this information I'm buying cannabis? And that's something that's unfortunate that it has to be dealt with. But in a way, I'm not opposed to regulation at all. And everyone, when you get into cannabis, they always say embrace regulation because it's the only way to go. So our job is to simply accept what the state, because every state is its own, and then at the VA, obviously, you're in a national kind of a regimen, but understand that these are the rules of play, and therefore we have to abide by them and figure out how to get our story out there and do the best that we can for our recreational customers and our medical clients as well, our medical patients. And if they're veterans, that's a special conversation, and we're always happy to have it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I know when I first started in medical that we had some patients that were veterans that lived in VA housing, and they said that, they were worried that they were going to lose their VA housing because they can't consume it there, they can't bring it with them, but they had their medical cards to treat different things from when they did serve.
Right. Well, sometimes, and they feel the medical card is almost kind of sort of leaves a kind of a more of a record, so they'll come in and they'll buy the adult use, and then they have to pay more, and they might not be able to get the potency that they're looking for, the quantity that they're looking for. So you hate that they have to make those personal calculations, but these are the rules under which we work.
Operating. Yeah. I mean, Massachusetts, at least they did make it a regulation when they first launched adult use that adult use customers are anonymous, and you can only retain the information for 24 hours unless people opt in, which a lot of people don't realize that, but I know that it brings a lot of comfort to some as well that don't want to be put on a list.
I think so. They always suspect if someone's taking a picture of me somewhere, and this will be bad if my boss hears about it or something. Fortunately, through society, I mean, we know that Americans, 70% now want legalization. So that knee-jerk reaction from my generation, where people would say, "Oh no, that's hush hush, and you can't talk about that, and don't tell anyone." What do you mean you take an edible at night to sleep? Are you crazy? You're a grandparent. Yep. Well, I'm sorry. That's the way it works, and happy to talk about it and educate those who want to understand. But I never presume, and I never get into, it's still a controversial industry, and I'm always happy to engage and to hear, people talk about youth and all that. And, it's 21 and up. And I always say every conversation starts there. And it's not good for youth because of developmental issues and all. And as you know, in the cannabis industry, we're at the forefront of education, drug education, hard drug education, because it's in our interest to make sure that that people are abiding and that our customers are not lighting up outside, which is always that sort of instant fear. And I say, no, people get it. And it's really, they're not interested in breaking the law. And an interesting stat I read is when there is an availability of legal cannabis in a particular neighborhood or community, the black market goes down around it. And that black market is always going to be sort of, a factor. And they're always going to be undercutting prices and because they're not, burdened by regulation costs and testing and all those good things. All we can do is take them on the ground that we can take them on and say ours is tested. We sell it as economically as we can. We do the bonuses and benefits and bundling and discounts that we can do. There's a lot of regulations there, as you know, what we can and can't do, but we're doing our best. And again, you start seeing people that say, I understand that I can go down and I can go to my old dealer and, and we go way back and I could always buy from him. But you know what? I'd rather buy on the up and up and let those taxes do the good things for the communities that they can do. So it's just a part of a step-by-step, baby steps out of the crib of an industry kind of finding its way.
For sure. And I think, too, that it helps that, legal operations can say, hey, these things go through testing. We know that there aren't pesticides in it. We know there aren't molds or yeast. And especially a lot of people are worried about even just getting cannabis that has fentanyl that's laced. So, we can say at these legal places, hey, it's not laced with fentanyl and it's safe to consume.
Right.
You're not going to get sick for it. I mean, Mass even took it a step further and made it so you can't put vitamin E acetate into your vapes because people were getting popcorn.
Absolutely. I mean, the testing thing is it seems so kind of obvious when you're in that why would you from my day it was seeds and stems and God knows there was the old rumor they sprayed black flag into it or whatever so you'd feel something, right? And what you felt was your brain cells getting knocked over one at a time or 1 million at a time. If you stay within the legal industry, particularly in Massachusetts, which as you know it is highly tested, and at the very least we can say yes. Because people ask about the vapes with the horrible, so many were dying because those oils were, and all those additives were collecting in the lungs, and the vapes that are produced in Massachusetts don't have those after effects, don't have those contaminants in them, and this is something that we can say differentiates us obviously from black market and untested product.
Well, I mean, even if you're looking at legal states, I believe it was Missouri that changed their regulation recently. So before it was you were allowed to have 0.2 microparts per, I want to say it was 1,000 or 100 of vitamin E acetate, and they just changed it to 5. So you're allowed to put more vitamin E acetate in it.
Again, it's state by state, and sometimes we in Massachusetts, where we are, very regulated, and sometimes you and I might sit in the back room and say, "Oh my God, more regulations." But you know what? In the end, you step back and say, "It's for the good," and it will help the industry gain the trust of its patrons. So, but every state is going to be different. And we were talking about Maine a while ago before we started this broadcast. And, Maine's a little bit more kind of, freewheeling at the margins. Very libertarian, which I'm very sympathetic to in so many ways. But there is a point where the public good has to be taken into account on many fronts. And so I am proud to, when I talk about the industry in Massachusetts, even with peers of mine that might be sort of more kind of skeptical of its long-term, viability as an industry and a lifestyle choice, I can say, whatever beliefs you might have, total respect, so be it. But understand that the industry as it's being run and moving toward is not, your grandfather's cannabis. This is a different world where it really is almost medicine. It is medicine, but it's testing, and you walk into our cultivations and you can eat off the floor. These are like hospital operating rooms, and everyone's got all their hazmat stuff on and all the rest. And I remember I went into early on when I was touring a cultivation, because we cultivate at Green Meadows, as you know, we're organic and we make other products. Gummies we're coming out with now, which is all great. But I would walk in initially and I'm putting on the suit and I'm getting these air showers and all. This is nonsense. I mean, come on, this is just a plant. The hairnet, we've been through it, so I can talk about it. We've been through some, we've had our issues in early days, and you realize that it is really important to follow these hygienic rules, because this is something that people ingest, and it's got to be pure. If you're gonna, in particular, if you're gonna be organic, so you can't just hit it with even legal, pesticides or whatever. We don't do any of that, because we just want to make sure that we say that this stuff is got nothing in it. It's going to harm you. If you're okay with cannabis and okay with the CBDs and all the rest and the terps, which I'd love to talk about, because terpenes, are so important. No, terpenes are great, and it's look, I'm the biggest ignoramus in the world as far as the industry, and now what are terps, and now I understand that they are the aesthetic of this product. And again, so in the cultivation world, all of those regulations that we deal with in the dispensary side, the retail side, are tenfold. And again, they're challenging, and you can have a crop that sometimes is less illustrious than a previous crop and not as good as the one that's coming. But that's the plant, and the plant's going to do what it's doing, and you just got to understand that this is Mother Nature, and she's a wonderful dance partner, but sometimes she leads and sometimes you do.
What would you say? What was your first thought when you stepped into a legal cultivation before you had your own?
Well, again, I was super. Everyone is when they, particularly if they think of cannabis as just in a baggie with God knows what, and then you walk in and you see rooms full of the most beautiful, fragrant cannabis, and everyone tending it, and again, cannabis cultivators, this is in their blood. This is their baby.
Yeah.
And ours are just the same way. And when you go in, but I would look around, and again, that idea, like, why do I have all this stuff on? Why am I wearing this hairnet and all? And then you go in and you realize this is part of a respect for the process and the respect for what makes this plant different. Again, looking at it and then having built one, I realized that it's kind of a magic, and everyone has different ideas about lighting and HVAC and all those things. But whatever combination you're doing, if your plants are coming through, as pure as you want them, and as potent and as clean as you want them, then you've hit on a formula that works. And in our cultivation, now that I've seen others and I've seen some, I thought, geez, we should have done that. So I'm always trying to learn.
Yeah.
And what's really great in cannabis, I really have found, it sounds kind of I don't know, sort of kumbaya or whatever, but I have never walked into a cultivator where they didn't share their information. And we love to talk war stories in a way, but you can't believe how we screwed this up, and we should have done this design instead of that. But you are imparting something to others. And that was when we were starting out. Again, we made every mistake in the book, I'm sure, but on the other hand, there were so many that were helpful and say, listen, you're going to have this vendor's going to tell you this, and this one's going to say you want this system. We think this. We've had good success with this one. Take a look, and that saves you so much time. And then we try to pay it forward the same way. You really do. There's plenty of time to get competitive and try to undersell the other guy and have that's capitalism, and I'm all for that. On the other hand, a little bit of camaraderie in cannabis can do us all good, because in cannabis there is a really interesting double culture. There, it's business, it's capitalism. We're all trying to, and it's medicine, and we're competing here. And on the other hand, we're kind of, particularly in the beginning, it's us against the world. Yeah. So let's work together. And when you have those moments where people really are kind of letting their hair down, we're a couple miles from you, and we're trying to do this, and you're trying to do that, but can you believe this? We're doing this together, and there's nothing better than to realize this is an adventure that we're on, as well as all the stuff that drives me crazy and it made my hair white as snow. But nevertheless, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No, I agree. And I think, when everything was just medical and mass, and it was very, very new, and everyone had to be vertically integrated, businesses were more apt to be a little more hush-hush about what was going on. But
right.
As the market became more saturated, as more businesses opened up, and, also just staff shifted from place to place, there's been a lot of turnover in this industry specifically. But I think it's because it's still so new. It's still a startup industry. People are trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what's the best fit for them as an individual, what's the best fit for a company. But I think that really helped allow for bigger conversations of, hey, how can we collectively do something a little bit better? How do we all, have these grows that are operating well? What works better than other things? I think that's really unique, and it's also it's good for this industry because everyone's growing at the same time, and we're all trying to just figure out how to make it work.
Yes.
And how to survive and how to just bring the best products to people.
Yep.
And make also just destigmatize cannabis as a whole.
Yep.
And say, hey, this is for everybody. It's not just for this person. It's not just for the burnout that sits on the couch all day long and eats snacks.
We love him still, though.
We do. And sometimes, I'm that burnout that I just want to sit on the couch.
Yeah, well, my oldest son, who is CEO, my number two son is CEO of the operating company Green Meadows. My oldest is CEO of the management company that manages the property and all the rest around it. And he was, when we be talking about medicine and veterans, which is super important. It's why really we began. But he was sitting there saying, don't forget, it's fun too. It's cannabis too. So it's one of the things that I love to talk about. And you and I were chatting a little bit about, for me, that combination of what we'll generalize as sort of cannabis culture, and then the corporate culture.
Yep.
And corporate's a bad word in cannabis. Oh, we've had people that left one company, now and why do you want to join Green Meadows from so and so? And they say, well, they were too corporate. And I get it. That's sort of. On the other hand, corporate matters. Corporate it just means that there are certain there are strictures that we have to kind of pay attention to. And yes, this is a business, and people have put money out to start the business, and it needs to be supported as best we can. On the other hand, it's cannabis. It is medicine. We can talk very seriously with people that come in with very serious issues. On the other hand, they might be wanting to just get something good for a Saturday night that they're going to a show or whatever. We'll take care of that too. You want to burn out on the couch and just relax? We can take care of you. You're welcome. So I always say what I've loved about the industry, and I actually think that this is good for America, among other reasons why I think cannabis is it can be a very positive thing. When I stand in our dispensary or others, and you see someone coming in, maybe a working mother, she's just undoing her business suit, and if she's going to head home, and she's next to someone who's got tattoos and dreadlocks, and they're talking about cannabis, and they be from two different worlds, but here they are in a dispensary, and you'll see people lining up, and political affiliations not relevant, personal identifications, whatever they may be, not relevant. Again, we're talking about something, and what you get this kind of meeting of the minds of different cultures at dispensaries where, again, people, you'll have grandparents like me that are in line that maybe know nothing, and so they're learning as they are waiting. They're talking to a bud tender, a GSA, or they're talking to just the person in line with them who may be from a completely different background, and they're just, oh yeah, I had really good luck with this CBD combination with my THC, and then we had a cookout, and we all did this, and we had these beverages, and then someone will say it was really good, and I'm an old person, and I'm having trouble sleeping at night. What are you thinking? So you get this combination, and by God, America could use a little bit of that. We're all in our separate corners, and we've all got our tribes and our identifications, and I'm all for that. That makes us who we are in so many ways. But let's not forget the commonalities that we have, and cannabis, lo and behold, has become one for many, many people.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think just because of the way that culture is kind of shaken out in the U.S., it's a very capitalistic kind of like meritocracy type of society where, we're all trying to make that American dream. We're doing whatever we can to get there, but we're all focused in our little worlds, but we forget about that larger community around us.
Yeah, it's so classic. And, the pendulum swings, and there is, there's a lot of animosity is the wrong word, but there's a lot of skepticism and kind of mutual suspicion. And again, I don't want to overstate its power in this way, but I have, in our dispensary and others, when I see this generational breadth of people, again, there are people that will come in, and this count me as one of these in the early days. You can't believe you're in a dispensary. You're looking over your shoulder, says, the cops are coming, right? I mean, and then you mean I can take this home with me, and I can, and no one's gonna bother me. So you get through that first hurdle, and then come back a year later, and you say, I want some of this, and I want some of that, and I want to make this for my friend, and I'm going to do some baking, so I'd like to have some extra, So it becomes just a very casual kind of conversation. But on that element of that, the combination of sort of, again, corporate culture, cannabis culture, it's interesting to me too, where I see folks that have joined our company at whatever level it may be, and they might be someone that looks completely countercultural in whatever way we all show that, whatever it can be. And you're going to say, well, this person is going to be great, and but they're going to have trouble on the side of, that we do expect them to try to, they do have to try to let us know their schedule and keep to their schedule, keep to their commitments, and help us move the company forward. And I might say someone that, I might make a generalization. This person is just not going to make it on the, they love weed, they love talking about it, they like using it, that's all great. I don't think they're going to really, in the long term, and then I love being surprised where the one that I just said, this person, and they come in and they love the sort of the structure side of it too. And they say, I like coming in on a Monday and knowing what is expected of me and what the team's going to be doing. And whereas someone else that I would have thought this person is going to be moving right up the ladder and they don't work out, because they say this isn't as, what I thought. And so I love being surprised because I always love telling a story about Enid Rodriguez. She heads our security now for really at Southbridge, which was our original store, but now overall. Now Enid came in at our very first store in Southbridge, and we were having our job fair. And listen, I knew nothing about cannabis. My sons and I, that run the company, we had pretty good business chops, particularly them. I had the least, but the cannabis was new. But so there we are, and folks coming in, and because I knew nothing, I was just taking the names, and then my son and others were interviewing and all, and we were just putting the very first team together. So Enid comes in, she's local to Southbridge, Latina, and she was dressed like she was going to work for Goldman Sachs. She came in and she had a briefcase and all this coming, and so we signed her right up. So she initially was just doing security, overnight or whatever, but just a person that immediately took to what we were trying to do. But the funniest story I tell about her is our very first day we opened the dispensary. She brought her mother along because she'd been with us for a while, and her mother did not speak English. My wife taught public high school Spanish for 27 years. She speaks fluently. So we're speaking to Enid's mom, and Enid, through my wife, she brought her mother because her mother was very, very skeptical of her daughter working in cannabis. This is just not a good thing. She was thinking for my daughter. So we walked around and we showed it, and we were all excited. It was the first day opening. The cultivation had been open for a little while, at least in parts. And so we walked around, and I sort of made a special project of taking Enid's mom around and with my wife next to me to help sort of interpret and talk about, and showed her everything, gave her the cook's tour and all the rest. And at the end, I'll never forget, and Enid said, well, I had a little conversation with my mother, and she thinks it's okay that I'm working in cannabis now. Well, to get to the end of the story, Enid now runs everything for us on the security side. She's awesome. She has a team under her. And again, this was someone, I didn't make a presumption about her, but I just didn't know. And then when I seeing quote unquote sort of looking down from the chairman position, whatever that may mean, to see these stories within our company, folks that have started businesses, they're full of tales like that. I hadn't, I was a writer. I was living in, working out of my 10 by 10 room and, writing books that nobody reads, but nevertheless, and trying then to kind of catch the real world as best I could, Here we were seeing folks come into a company, creating it and building not just a job, but building a career, and showing us, but more importantly, perhaps showing themselves what they're capable of, and then we just stand back and are awed and grateful to know them and to have them, on our side. So when I see that, she's just one example, but it's probably the most gratifying thing about the company as a creative enterprise to see these kinds of blossomings, both for ourselves and as a family, but individually among our staff.
Well, and I think too, when you bring up like corporate culture and regular culture and kind of those two different segments of things, is I think there's also that in between of cannabis corporate culture.
Yes.
So you're like merging the two.
You are throwing all kinds of recipes, getting complicated.
Yeah,
Yep.
It's kind of like anything's up for grabs in those moments. I think, especially for those that have been in the industry for so long, it's like, okay, we know when we're talking shop and it's business and we have to be serious. But hey, now especially post 2020, post COVID, all of the events, like, that's one of those moments where, hey, we have those moments where we're talking shop, but then this is where we're bonding. This is where we're hanging out. This is where we're having a good time and consuming cannabis. Yep. And it's really interesting to watch that balance. But I also think that's what's unique to the corporate cannabis culture and the cannabis industry in general is you're watching so many people create careers that might have never have thought that they would have created this career before. Because it's so open to possibilities. I think when I first got into cannabis, there wasn't anything as a community outreach coordinator. And 2 years after I was, it was like, hey, we need this thing now. And it's just there's constant evolution, there's a constant need for something new, and for something that might previously been developed in a different industry that you need this huge degree and experience for. In the cannabis industry, nobody has that experience yet. Nobody has a degree in that because it wasn't made yet. So it gives people an opportunity that maybe didn't want to go a traditional route, find kind of their place and career.
And then they find out though that the traditional sides of it, because it's aren't awful.
No.
Do you know they can be? Certainly, I mean, you could, but to be able to sort of meld that initial impulse is, hey, it's weed. I love weed, and it's been great. I love love doing it. And then they come in, and that's their, maybe they think the whole culture's that way. And again, we never want to lose that. It's fun. It's got to be fun. And working with us and for us, and as a partners with us, it's got to be fun. You never want to lose that. But on the other side, there's this corporate side. Again, corporate's such a bad word. You almost think I got to think of a new word, but it's really what people understand that that's the combination that's involved here. And I think that people that are outside the industry don't really appreciate how conscientious people want to be. People that you might think would love living sort of outside the law and don't ever want to be on the grid or anything like that. And now they come in and they are conscientious about the requirements of the industry because they want the industry to do well. And again, part of the reason why I know people have helped our company when we were starting, and we try to help, is we don't want people to kind of mess up, and have problems where, product goes awry and, there are, dispersals of it, out the back door or whatever, or the wrong people are getting it. We are in the forefront of controlling that because it's in our own interest, quite selfishly, to make sure that we do everything right. And when you find people, again, you learn not to generalize about appearances and anything. I mean, I always laugh in my day. At school, there were people going into business or whatever they want to study, but there were these crazy folks I knew that were skateboarding to class, and they were doing this crazy thing called coding, and they were going into the computer lab. Nobody goes to the computer. I mean, I go way back. So, and now they were working in MS-DOS and the big spools of paper and all this on these old computers, and now they're masters of the universe, doing whatever they're doing and advancing all of our lives technologically. So we would make presumptions about these geeks and these nerds that are just they're this own culture. What are they doing? And now they understand technology and the possibilities in computing and in AI and all the things. And cannabis is the same way, where you're going to make a presumption about someone. Oh, yeah, they work at a dispensary. You know what? That's working at a store in a very competitive, highly regulated industry. And you know what? And they're kicking ass. And so let's give them credit. And they are interested absolutely in complying with the law and being a positive force in the community. And again, you see that rippling forward. I mean, our best friends in Southbridge are the police. We love, we're on a first name basis with all of them. They we see them, and this is great. They're not law enforcement regulation. These are not in opposition to us. They are partners. They really have to be seen that way. And, there's no other way to approach it. Life's too short if you're butting heads with everybody,
I agree with that one. And I mean, when the cannabis industry first started, and it was the green rush, and it started out in the West and kind of trickled over this way, a lot of people compared it to the tech industry. And not even just from it being a startup, but just culture within the industry itself, but kind of how everything was just new and breaking ground. But also I think it's these groups of people we all have preconceived notions of, and oh, wait a minute, look at what they're turning into a multi-million dollar, some places billion dollar industry at this point.
We're a long way from there, from your lips to God's ears, but no, we'll be patient about it. But my oldest son, Tom, whom I mentioned, the CEO of our managing company, he was very much involved in, had involved with a startup when he got out of college in tech and when we went to the first conferences, what we first did as a family, and really in 2017, 2018, we were getting this notion to get into cannabis. We went to Las Vegas to one of the big conferences, and again, even then, I haven't been to one for a year or two, but they're massive now. The attendance is through and at that time it was, I think it was in maybe there was 8 or 10,000 people there, and they said 2 years ago there were 400 people. But when we went there with my sons and I, just to try to dip our toe in the water and just go walk, meet all the vendors and all the booths, and to meet the people that were doing the different projects. And Tom came out and he said, "This reminds me of the early days of the .com." Now we know .com had its shakeout. Cannabis is having its shakeout. It's a hard industry. Every state is a little different. New states tend to, prices are high, and it's great to be in those. In more maturing markets where there's more competition, you're getting a little bit of a boom and bust thing, and a bust to hopefully not us. And but that's part of American industry. That's part of capitalism, and you got to understand that the rules, just as in cannabis, the rules are still the same. There's going to be competition. There's going to be price fluctuations. There's going to be turnover. There's going to be controversy. But in the end, if you do it right and you work with as much integrity as you can with partners and with your clientele and your patients, and you hang on and do things right, hopefully you'll be all right. And
for sure,
we've made that about ourselves. We just try to do the best we can, and we start with veterans. But as I say, whether it's someone that's coming in that's got a child, that's looking, that's maybe got, seizures or whatever, and maybe a CBD and cannabis can help, and they've been told by their doctor they have a card. We're gonna meet them very quietly in our consulting room, and that's gonna be taken in a very serious way. If someone else is coming in and he's 21 or she's 21 or more, and they are having a big party tonight and they want some good stuff, well, we can do that too, and that's part of the challenge, and it's part of the fun.
Yeah. So, I think this is a common phrase that a lot of people use within the industry, that we want to meet people where they're at, but it sounds like at Green Meadows, you're really making that effort to do everything you can to not just meet people where they're at, but also make sure they're comfortable.
You have to be. When I read our reviews, and you can't help it at night. I'm like we all do. We put on our
they come through your email too.
They come through, and I love it. And I've told this story many times. In fact, if my kids were here, they'd roll their eyes but my favorite review that we ever had, and if you go to Google and you'll see there, we got lots of them, and they're all really, really good. But my favorite, it was a while ago, maybe 18 months ago, but a couple evidently had come in and they wrote in the review, they gave us 5 stars. This house, where they said, we went in and we said right away, we were old. They were clearly older, and they said we were interested in the industry just as an industry. We are not users. We immediately told the attendant, security person, and when we were checked in there, that we were not buying. Would it be okay? And she said, and what they said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here, obviously, but I don't know if it was a man or woman that was writing, but saying that we expected to be kind of ignored because we said right away we're not buying. They said they gave us all the time we wanted. We asked a lot of questions because we just wanted to understand the industry that was happening, in our community, and they came out in the end. So all we can say is we can't speak to the product, but by all means, if you're interested and you think you might want to know cannabis, this is a great place to go. And I thought that's perfect because they came in just wanting to learn about something because they've grown up, as I've grown up, where this is absolutely in the shadows, and now it's much less so. And so that was a nice thing to hear because they had nothing to gain and everything to offer by saying, hey, but great place, check it out. So we are trying to be that. Every dispensary does. And one of the things that for someone of my generation, the consciousness of veterans and what they go through. When I was a kid and I came of age just after the Vietnam War, so I got out of high school after the draft had ended. But I remember, and my father was part of this generation of military men and women that were coming back from a very controversial war, obviously, and the cliches of being called baby killer and all the rest. That's not a cliche. That happened. They just were scorned publicly. And my father, who could not have been prouder to be a military man from a military family, would literally sometimes just say, I'm not going to wear my uniform. It's just because the people are just going to look at me sideline. This is like talking about 69, 70, 71. Yeah. And now, of all things that have changed, I don't care what your politics are, whether you're an utter pacifist or whether you are want America to be the biggest have the biggest stick on the block. When you see people in uniform at the airport, the bus station, at a dispensary, your first thought is thanks. And that wasn't always the case. So when I see that, and I know now I see other dispensaries, Seed being one of them, we value veterans. We want to recognize what you've done, what we owe you, and we want to. If we do charitable work, we want to make sure that we keep veterans as part of the mix at minimum. They're a little bit higher priority for us just because where we've come. But I love that because I grew up as a kid and I saw that was not the case, and now the fact that military service is recognized for what it requires of both of the person in uniform and the family and support system around them. That's reflected by so many dispensaries now. So in all businesses now, not all, but I can go to any store now and you can look at their website, and so many of them have mention of veterans and that charities they support will be veteran oriented. That's a sea change.
Yeah.
And cannabis is at the forefront of it, and I like to think Green Meadows is at the forefront of the forefront, but nevertheless, we are all doing God's work in that regard, I feel.
For sure. And I mean, and Green Meadows has an entire brand that's dedicated to helping veterans, correct?
We do, and you're keeping me on track much better than I do myself. So Lijuan, I got to thank you. But anyway, yeah, we have we have Green Meadows line, which is our sort of our premium organic, and we make vapes out of that line, and now the gummies, and of course the flower, which includes the pre-rolls, etc. But also within our umbrella, we have a brand called General's Aid, which is made from non-organic flour. It's tested. It's all really good, and we curate it and make sure it's good. That, and we got the idea of General's Aid. Well, the aid de camp is the support of the general officer. So this was a sort of a support brand. I hate to call it sort of a sub brand. It makes it sound low quality, but it simply is a support brand under the Green Meadows sort of umbrella. And in that General's Aid brand, we have a number of charities that we support, both local and at a large scale. But on that particular brand, there is a specific amount of gross revenue which will go to veteran charities. So that General's Aid, and then we also have within our menu selections, we have also the At Ease brand, which is our value line, because now with the economics the way they are, it's great to have a premium brand, but unfortunately you might have to charge a little bit more. Now, but I want to make sure that everyone knows we're bringing the Green Meadows prices are right there, and we have the great stuff, and it's right, really good price. But we want to make sure if someone comes in with $15, they can leave with something.
Yeah.
So we can make sure they have something very good after. So we have an At Ease value brand, which is really popular because we outsource it, but we curate it. We deal with certain cultivators that can give us the quality that we want, and it can be very high quality and very high potency, but we can charge less because we don't have to grow it under organic, strictures. So we want to make sure that we can be, all things to all people, because cannabis is all people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And how many brands does Green Meadows have under their umbrella?
Well, we've got the Green Meadows, which again it's the vapes, and now the new gummies, which I think are going to be on the shelves within weeks.
That's exciting.
They're star shaped. They're very cool. So we're keeping up the general thing, Then there's General's Aid, and then there's At Ease, and we'll continue to move those three forward. The last one, which I'll mention, it's the only one, and not that we don't want to put our name on everything, but we started out as Green Meadows. Green Meadows that was the name of my father's organic produce farm, traditional produce. So that's why and in fact at Southbridge, we have the original sign that my father put up in 1980, of the Green Meadows organic produce and meats.
That's really cool.
So we have it on the wall, and it's the actual sign. There's a picture of it by the farm stand when my dad's
awesome.
there. So we do keep that organic element of what we're about, but making sure that we are full service, and we can offer, people come in and with all different kinds of economic backgrounds and whatever they have in their pocket, we want to make sure they get something really, really that gives them what they need, and whether on a medical side or on the rec side, and it's just something that you need to do. But I was going to mention also Patent Reserve is the last brand, and Patent Reserve is CBD only.
Okay.
So right now we have a tincture which we call Tranquility, and we make it with a partner, and it's got a what is it? It's almost 3,000 milligrams of CBD in these in the standard. It's pure, and it's got a little lychee nut flavoring. It's pretty, and I use it. When you get to be a person of a certain age, sometimes you wake up at night for certain reasons, and you can't get back to sleep, and a little bit under the tongue, and then you can lay in bed. And whereas in times past, I might say, well, it's 3:30 in the morning. I may be up until I got to get up, and then I'm sitting there saying, I wonder if it's going to work, and then pretty soon the alarm goes off. The CBD is just right for me. So Patent Reserve, we have also, and I saw you have it here. We have the muscle freeze, we call it, which is like a kind of like a Bengay or Arctic freeze kind of a muscle, but it also has the CBD. People love it. It's you put it on and it works. And we're not the only one that makes these products, but that is the other element that we're doing. So Patent Reserve is our CBD only line, and that's available through its own kind of portal as well. So it's something that we added. We just wanted to make sure. Again, if people come in and why not be a CBD store as well?
Yep.
And so we're learning. We are getting better with each dead end that we run into, we make a turn, and now we're on a highway again, and we're going forward, and we're trying new things, and always working on new products. You mentioned the Tank, which is our 1 gram disposable vape, and the technology's been a big part of it. Obviously, what's in it's the main thing, and we make that with our Green Meadows extracted oils. But now we're coming out with that's a 1 gram. There's a 2 grammer coming in. It's called Stellar. I was given permission by my sons to mention it today. It's not quite out there, but I think it's weeks away. It's 2 grams, and again, what's key as well as what's in it is that the technology is great, and you can move between canisters within the the pen itself. Two different strains, and you can decide you want one at one time, and then you can click the thing and go to the other, or you can mingle it, which is you can do both at that. You can say, give me a 50-50 of whatever, an indica and a sativa, let's say. You use those general terms, and again, I think it's going to be popular.
Now, are those disposables, or are
that's disposable? That's rechargeable disposable. And the disposables, people really like them. And again, you run into when they get bigger, they can clog, and also it's very important to make the technology right, because if people are going to put out good money for that, they don't want to get to the back third and not be able to get it because the damn thing's not, is misfiring and is clogged. So again, these are the sort of the nuts and bolts of any production, whether it's in cannabis or not, where the damn thing's got to work, or else people are going to let you know.
Oh, I know. And it's really interesting to see how vapes, whether they're cartridges or disposables, have evolved in this industry, because I remember when disposables first started getting big, a lot of people were very hesitant about them. They're like, I don't know about that. What if it dies on me? And then someone was like, hey, you can also recharge these, and people are like, oh, well, maybe I'll start kind of gravitating towards them. But I think now they're becoming more popular than cartridges almost.
Yeah, I think it's a convenience thing. I mean, it's a little bit like in every way, whether it's on our streaming through our TV, or whether the technology in our car or our computer, we want it to be quick and we want it to work. And so that's really that's the mission in any technology that you're bringing into cannabis. It's got to work. And again, it begins with what's in it. And we spend a lot of time on mixing and matching our formulas on the vapes to make sure, whether it's full spectrum, which I'm lately coming to the full spectrum. They're really appreciation of the plant itself. But there are many that want the bubble gum, or want it's a seasonal with the peppermint. There's
a market for both sides.
There's a market for both sides, and I love it when I call them the mad scientists on the young guys and young women that are in the back there, sort of coming up with new concoctions, and they'll say, Bob, take this home and you could try this one. We're trying to see if this is the right mix. And of course, I'm lightweight, so my son was very careful. He said, Bob, just a little draw, because I'll be in traction if I take a couple of, so I'll make sure I just have a little sip, and then I say, I think, but I also say that I'm the worst judge, because I think they're all great. And I slap the backs of all our team saying, you killed it this time. But my sons and within our team, they're the best judges, and they'll say, this one's a little better, this one had a little nicer effect, or this one had a nicer flavor. So it really is a collaborative effort, and
awesome.
There's nothing better than to sit around the room and everyone's like, well, what'd you think about your whether you had the coquito or the peppermint smash or whatever the hell we have, and people here I'm talking with my sons about their experience of their cannabis, and when they were teenagers, of course, it's a different world. We all have different hats now, and I wouldn't have
a shift in perspective.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Awesome.
It's been quite a ride, and lo and behold, we're still on it.
And that's wonderful. It's really like a family business.
It is indeed. As I say, it literally was a kitchen table where we sat around and we took a show of hands. Do we want to jump into this industry? Rob, whom you've met, my son Bob Patton, he's our chief marketing officer. Chris is our CEO. My stepson, Tom, my stepson. We knew that they were going to be in the control room. They were going to be in the trenches. Me, I go there if they need to mop something up, I've got to mop. If it's just need to hang around and shoot the breeze, if I've got some veterans that want me to talk about General Patton, I'll do that. If I can talk with you about veterans, or as best I can talk about our products, everyone has a different role. But as a family, we get together, and I'm kind of amazed because listen. it's as you know, this industry has its challenges. I mean, prices, which is great for consumers, but prices have plummeted. And when we got in the industry in the beginning, people were talking about it wholesale for good bud, maybe $4,000 a pound, and you can see it out there. You can source it now at $400, $500, $600. You know, West Coast prices. That's hard on a company because you build your models. I mean, this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but so when you have these challenges and you got to make hard decisions about what you're going to do within the company and to try to, move forward and survive and thrive. And so the fact that we can sit around as a family or with other members of the team, and I'll be at home and they'll talk about dad and I'm playing with my grandkids, their kids and all the rest. And it's dad and they call me Grand Bob. I don't know where that came from, but Grand Bob, that's it. It's one word. And cool. It is cool. I didn't think of it. That's why it's cool. At any rate, but that's what I'm saying. So in the family side, and my wife is right there with us, and yet on the other side, it's all business, and then they're talking to Bob. So I'm dad on one day, and then I'm Bob, and we're making decisions as a company, and somehow we still get along. There's never been a crossword between us. And we come to consensus, and there's more members. It's not just family now. We have so many people that have joined us now at all levels. On the finance side, on the production side, and so we all now get together around the table and say, what are we going to do? But it really is a family. It's kind of a cliche. I do like to think that our staff, what do we have, about 80 employees now, that it is a family. But we as a company, we ourselves have had to go through times where we've had to say, are we going to have to, cut costs? And that's not pretty sometimes when you do that, and someone really good, you say, we can't afford to keep you. We're going to help you get the greatest job in the world. But we've had to go through that too, but we're better for it. And when people can understand that we're trying to represent ourselves as a family owned. We're not multi-state. We can't lean on our killer store in Miami because if we're struggling in Southbridge, for example, we have to find a way to do it there. And it's as I say, it's been an adventure. I always joke my hair was brown when we started. It wasn't, but nevertheless, it's hard. And I'm not telling you something you don't know, but. As I'll quote the Godfather and the Corleones. This is the business we chose, no complaining. Yeah. So we are here, and I've loved the diversity that it's brought me in contact with in a brand new way. The walks of life that cross, whether on one side of the counter or the other. Mm-hmm. Diversity is key, not just because it's the right thing to do, but guess what? It helps your company, and it makes for a more representative team, because you really want to represent the community that you are serving, and you do that by having all the full spectrum of whatever it is, and at all levels too.
Well, and also we're all experts in our own experiences, and my experience might be different than your experience, but I know how to talk to people that have had similar experiences to me, whereas you know how to talk to people that have similar experiences to you. So when you kind of cross those paths, you're reaching a wider group of people. Right,
which circles back to, again, not just in our in our retail floor do we see this kind of mixing and blending and a kind of mutual accommodation of all these different walks of life and all these different backgrounds and all these different economic and ethnic backgrounds. The same thing's happening in the quote unquote boardroom back, our messy conference table with all our whatever. We can have those same kinds of looking around the table and say, boy, is this a hell of a rainbow here,
Awesome.
And it's the only way to fly.
It's really, really wonderful. And I know so just to bring it back a little bit, we were talking about kind of like, you guys haven't gotten into any major fights or anything like that.
No, amazingly.
Which is awesome, especially because, I've definitely seen over the years in different companies I've worked for, post-pandemic especially, like the market for adult use in mass became so oversaturated, and it kind of all boomed at once because there was that hold on adult use.
Mm-hmm. The cork came out of the bottle and also boom.
Well, because also so many people just got their licenses right beforehand, just got their manufacturing up and running, and then had to halt everything. But then, okay, now you guys can all go back to it. And it was, I think, all across the board, a stressful time period for most companies.
Please. Very much so. Very much so.
To have everyone still be in that kind of cohesive family atmosphere, that's really, really amazing. amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when we built, at Southbridge, which is our core, we have about 9,000 square feet of canopy, but then we have the manufacturing and then all of sort of the accessory rooms and all the rest. So we built through that, and wouldn't you know? I mean, we built the guts of that in the heart of COVID. Yeah. So we had a COVID monitor, and only a certain number of workers could be there, and all that fun stuff, and it was a layer of difficulty on top of just whatever else we were trying to figure out as you build a production facility like that. And one of the things that again it's that understanding of what we're doing. We're growing cannabis here, but it's a production facility as well. So let's not put too fine a point on it, and yet it's still cannabis. So I'm always juggling, And when you asked me about what it was like to go into our place after having visited others, it's always with amazement. And whenever I feel challenged, whatever's going on, when I go back and I walk through there, and on the dispensary side too, but when I walk through and I look around and I talk to the team, I always walk out of this saying, God, hell yes, hell yes, forward, onward. And so there's no better kind of charge than that to when I can go. And that's the industry there. But after COVID, we worked through there, and, you couldn't open. We were struggling. Everything was harder. We had our extraction machine is made in Italy. It sat on a dock because I remember all the stuff about supply lines were all all the supply chains were clogged, and so our machine, which was huge, I think it's like 6,000 pounds and 8 feet high or whatever. It's like a VW van or something like that. It sits on a dock in Genoa, Italy. Why the hell we got one from Italy, I'll never understand. But that's what we did. It's a really, really good one, and it does unbelievable work at a great amount, but also really, really pure. So it sits on the dock in Genoa. Finally, we hear it's coming, and but because of the supply chain issues, we got a note from the shipper: all your costs are doubled, and it's not up for negotiation. You want your thing, your costs are doubled. So what do? So here you are. So you said, okay, we'll find a way. So you dig deep, you rob from Peter to pay Paul, and all. So then you get the thing in and you set it up. So naturally, once you're up, you leap and you just jump in and you produce, and everyone else did the same exact thing because they face the same challenges. So as you were saying, and someday people will write about this. I think it's very interesting.
Well, I hear you might be writing. That's
true. I am. That's another story because I am in my other life.
Give me 2 seconds.
Oh. Did we run out of power, or we went too long?
Okay, we'll start it again.
Okay.
Normally it shouldn't shut off like that, but
you could. Can you clip it? Can you?
I see what happened. The cord fell off of it.
Oh.
But it just turned off.
Okay.
So we can clip it back together.
You can do a little editing thing there and fix it? Okay, I'll leave that to you. I'd be lost with it.
All right. Perfect.
Did it catch the other stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It caught everything else.
Otherwise, I'll roll out all my stories again, and you have to be bored even more.
No, not bored at all. I think it's this cord.
Is it not?
I'm gonna try this one. There you go. We are rolling again.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, I'll just go back and figure out a way.
Clap. Okay, cool.
We ordered this large extraction machine, and it sat on the dock in Genoa, Italy, and it finally came. And as I was saying, once you have it, you want to just put it into use as best and as sort of maximally as you can. And every other company was doing the same. So again, it's part of the story of cannabis, and in Massachusetts, in that people blew out of the COVID restrictions and the COVID lockdowns, and as a result, there was a saturation, and that the businesses had to deal, and we're having to deal, and you're having to deal, and that's life. But it is part of the story that we're all a part of, is what I would say. It's a bad reality, good story, right? Isn't that the saying? And so, again, happy to tell all the war stories. On the other hand, happy to be on the other side of them and saying, we really do feel that the industry has got nowhere to go but up, and it's going to be... It's going to be a real change as legalization comes on and all. Probably not anytime soon, I think, because there's still such resistance at certain levels. But we're a part of it, and as are you. And let's go get it.
I agree, and I think COVID makes it a little more interesting too, because not only were we all locked at home for a little bit, and businesses were trying to operate in that time period. I mean, I know the dispensary I was at, they actually opened up for curbside on that Memorial Day, and it was absolutely insane. 600 orders, 2 minutes, like 8-hour lines. It was a long day.
I bet.
It was crazy, but it adds to that story, and it kind of also adds to all the experiences we've had. And now we're like, okay, well, hey, now we know how to do it better next time. Now, if this happens again, we know what to do. But it also, has those different challenges. I mean, just from like a cost perspective, people's disposable income went down post-COVID. You're seeing more value shoppers because also people are stocking up on things a little bit more. But also from like a manufacturer side, you're seeing the cost of goods going up.
Yep.
Like going up to get your boxes to put your vapes in or anything like that. And because we have that added level of regulation, it has to be child safe, to have to be tamper evident. That adds an extra cost to it.
Right.
So it's, I think it's really interesting to see how the different companies are operating when you're watching the price to manufacture something go up, but the price people are paying going down.
Yes.
And how that's all shaking out.
It's a classic dilemma, and it's taken down better people than us. If I may say, it's just the life of business. I have such more respect. I'll tell you, for example. When I would drive through my town and let's say a new restaurant opens up, and they're super excited and they've got the welcome, and you go and you try them out and it's fine and they're wonderful, and then but maybe, let's say they're not great, but you go and they're really working hard, and maybe you pop in a couple times, but then 6 months later you drive by and they're out of business. And in the old days I'd say, well, they were out of business. Now I understand that somebody's dream came to a not, maybe it's not over, but it hit a major hiccup, and I have such a different feeling having been in it. And my sons were all part of startups. They can tell you there's some good ones and some that don't work out, but they already had that appreciation, which I did not, of what it takes to create a business and to keep it going and to go through good times and bad times. When you sit down in the beginning, you just imagine all the good you're going to do, and then you realize that there are going to be problems out there, and you're going to have to make hard decisions. But it forces you, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. Well, for example, as we were trying to work through and find, new product lines and whatever. So, and I'm thrilled that Seed's a part of it. We have the clone program now. Yes. So we now make available and at our own dispensaries certain days of the month, and to other dispensaries clones. So home growers can come in and buy, and we choose our clones really carefully so they're really hardy stock. So they can, if you have my lack of a green thumb, they might even survive, in a person's household. We do keep the really good strains maybe back, but we make sure that we're not giving just the stuff that nobody wants. We make sure there's really good stuff that you can grow at home, and if that means you buy a little less of our product, we'll risk that, because you're going to come in and talk about your plant with us and talk about cannabis, and we're going to engage on a completely different level. And I said in the beginning, why would we grow clones and let people, sort of, again, they'll need us less, right? But you know what? we have better relationships with them and with the other retailers whom we wholesale clones to, because it's opened up a new avenue of conversation and engagement. And, so shame on me for not seeing the bigger picture. But it again, this is the good stuff that comes out of the bad stuff. And again, I won't ever call cannabis industry the bad stuff, but you and I both can say, and those that are listening and watching that can track it online or the news they're reading, like every industry, it has its ups and its downs. And there are many pressures, but there are many, many rewards, and financial is not even anywhere in the top 10 of what it gives to you. It's really about being a part of something new that is going to change the way of life in America for many, many people.
And at the forefront of that too.
Yeah, for better or worse, we are walking point, as they would have said in the military. And again, it makes for a lot of experience that we can pass to others. It's a theme that we've already talked about, but potential competitors were good to us, giving us good advice when we were trying to get up and running, and we do try to turn that around. From what LED lights you might want to use, or maybe the criteria that you might want to use in looking for certain staff members to do certain kinds of jobs. Anything you can do. There are now business forums are setting up, or there's always a little bit more power when you're collective in your appeal to the Cannabis Control Commission and the other the positions of authority. So all of these things are forming up around us, and instead of reading about the history of American business, now we're living it, and who to thunk it in a new way. And certainly in my case, because after I got out of college, I was a reporter for many years, well, not many years, but a number of years, and then I decided I wanted to be a novelist, and couldn't get my first novels going, so I ended up writing history books, and then went back to novels, and now I've been able to publish both. And I always say I sell just enough to where my agent returns my calls, but I do sell that many. And although I'm behind on everything now, but I am now writing a memoir of this experience of kind of a fish out of water, like me, little old me in cannabis. But here we are, and just kind of the things we've talked about, what I've learned about myself, about my family, about my sons, and about folks like you and companies like Seed, again. I thought I had been around the world a few times, and no fool me. But now that I'm been in cannabis, I can say that I was a babe in the woods as far as what life is like outside my little office, where I can get lost in my words, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I won't say it's been easy either.
Well, and I think that I know, because Rob mentioned it on our call, that you were writing a memoir about kind of your experience. I think that's really wonderful too, because it was a family business. Mm-hmm. It is a family business, and to talk about it from your perspective instead of kind of just, I feel like a lot of the things that come out about people in the cannabis industry are more from big cannabis, bigger corporations, but it's like, looking at that transition, having that point of view will be really, really cool for people to see.
Yeah.
So definitely excited.
Yeah, even things are interesting, even down in the trenches. It's fun to be at 80,000 feet and to make decisions about what you're going to do in one state or the other, and moving money around and all. I'm sure that's a lot of fun. But I can certainly say, it's for example, one of our first big inspections we had with the cultivation, and we've been building, and I mean, if you looked behind it, I mean, it was a lot of cleaning up to do, right? Yeah. So, and so we were there, and so my instinct right away, get me in there, and I'm cleaning the latrines or whatever else we're doing. And I remember some of our team would walk in and say, Bob, you don't have to do that. You can do. I said, no, it needed to be done. I can do this, so people that know a lot more about our tech issues that we're going through, or our plants, or setting up the retail points of sale. Let them do what they do, so I can clean this floor, so we can look good and be good. And so that's really where you learn about a business. Yeah. And my sons, I'm proud to say, the same way. Whatever is needed to be done, and that ethic is right down, because so many times where if we need some packaging to be done, or we've got to buck plants, or we've got to do some trimming, and we do it all by hand. So, and you've got to do it, and we've just had a big harvest, and we've got to get it done. Can people come from their other work, or maybe come in on a Saturday? I'm always amazed when there they are and they come. And
I think
the gratitude just is boundless for the so many on our team that just give of themselves that way. And we couldn't have survived without that, and count on it going forward.
And I think that makes all the difference for your employees too, because if they're willing to see that, like, hey, you're willing to come in and help out, you're willing to help do this, it helps that culture, right? And I will say, just from my experience in cannabis and outside of cannabis, you don't see that often, where you have your C-suites or your founders coming in to help do these things that are, entry-level positions, but it needs to get done.
It needs to get done. It needs to get done. This thing ain't going to happen by itself. If it's staying late, but you can't mandate it. People, have their own lives to get to and all the rest. But when I see that call go out on team emails, mass emails to everybody, hey, anyone that's here, we've got some bucking to do this weekend. If you can give us a couple hours, and then I go there, I'll drive up there. I'll put on my all my security and cleanliness outfits and whatever, and get in there. And I got my own sets of scissors. I know I'm good, man. I can trim, and I'm pretty good at it now. And we sit down and we shoot the breeze as we're talking, and I'm listening to their playlist and they're listening to mine, and we're talking about nothing. And I walk out of there, as I say, and I just feel like, damn, this is worth doing. This is worth doing, and that's the kind of thing I want to write about, as well as the many face plants that I had all the way through, because it is a fish out of water story. And my fundamental sort of take, I mean, there's so much sorrow in this world, but life is essentially a comedy, and I can only look at my antics in cannabis as somewhat comedic, but nevertheless serious as well.
That's awesome. Well, you're definitely going to have to let me know when that book comes out.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll get one to you, and I'll see my sales will spike on Amazon with that Lijuan Rob book. That must be her. She bought a book for me.
Awesome.
No, yours will be free, I promise. The publisher will give me less.
I just want an autograph, too.
Oh, yeah.
Autograph, all that fun
My father used to say, because people would come to my dad, he want his autograph because of his father, right? George S. Patton. And he used to say, my autograph and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee. In other words, my autograph's worth nothing. And so I'm happy to say that, too. But like I say, I've written many books, or not really, 7 I've published. Feels like many, but when you get in a bookstore and people actually buy a book in front of you and ask you to sign it, it's a great feeling of creativity brought to fruition. And starting Green Meadows, and I'm sure that the founders of Seed are the same way, and you're sort of one of the early ones here, so you've seen it grow as well. There's a very similar gratification to creating a business. I did not see that coming, but when I walk around now in our stores and meet our people and understand how the benefits we give to our employees, how some of them never had those kind of benefits and are able to dental care or things that they get that they never got before.
We have a new industry that's federally illegal, offering benefits that other industries don't offer. Right. It's truly amazing.
And you realize this has changed life. We talked about Enid and security. Now she's such a key member. She's got a team under her. She's now telling people all that she's learned from the ground up. And when I see that so many ways played through the company and in other companies that I visit, I say, oh, that's we're capitalists, and we want to hopefully come out of here in the black and all the rest. But you know what? That's part of why we do it as well. And let's not forget that, because otherwise it is really not worth doing.
Agreed.
And so we try to remember that, and I think we do. It's not all a happy story. Let me tell you, when the market did what it's been going through, you got to look at the company and say, what can we do to keep this thing alive and going? And you do your modeling, you do your plan, you talk around, and but we are very transparent all the way through. We have our all hands meetings all the time where everybody, top to bottom, whoever they may be, they're all on the same, Zoom call or all as many in person as we can do. And we talk about exactly where we're at and what we're doing and, how we can, get them moving forward so that there will be a bonus program put in place and all those good things. That's what we want to make sure that on that business, quote unquote, corporate side of things, that we're paying attention to, as well as, hey, we're going to have an awesome picnic this weekend with the team, and we're going to shut down a half a day, and we're going to go and we're going to hang out and play softball or whatever, and that's great too. So you never want to lose both. And I've heard about businesses doing it now, and 10 years ago I would have never imagined myself in this place, but I am here, and I have learned enough and made enough mistakes where I can even write a book about it, maybe. So that seems to be what will be next on my agenda, as well as having great afternoons with people like you, because I do like talking about the adventure that we've been on, because it has been that for sure.
I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your experience and talking about, what you, your family, and Green Meadows have really gone through to get where you are today, and just your opinions on the industry in general, because it's something else.
Yeah, well, I don't lack for opinions. I won't count for the credibility behind any of them, but I do my best to just call it the way it's come to me. And just walking around your shop here and meeting the folks, they're like the folks at Green Meadows. They care about what they're doing. They're gracious and grateful for patronage, and I just see that and I say, yeah, that's somewhat different in cannabis, because we all sort of intrinsically feel that this is new and this is not easy, and there are cameras all over the place and all that kind of stuff, which would just lock us into this, it gets you to be like sort of, Fort Knox, through a plate glass window or whatever. But no, these places are warm, they're welcoming. We love ignoramuses like me, because we can brag how much we know about the industry, and I know about that much. But I love to, as we're standing and I'm just walking around, to talk to people, and they can even ask me about my experiences with cannabis, and I'm happy to tell them. It's been important in my life too. I've often spoken about this. I probably drank a little more than was good for me in times past. I still will have a touch now and then, but a little bit of a microdose cannabis for me, and that's sort of at the level that I fly, has become my ceremonial moment at the end of a work day, or whatever. And so I'm happy to say that whatever way it kind of fulfills the thing that improves your life, this is worth considering. And so for all the reasons, whether it's medicinal or recreational, put me in the same category. It's helped me, and I'm happy to stand in any forum, hostile or benevolent, and tell them of my experiences and say, this is here. It's part of American life. Let's do it right, because it's not perfect. It has its controversies, and it can be abused. But on the other hand, it does, in fact, improve people's lives in many ways, if it's dealt with and approached in the right way.
Agreed. No, 100%. And I think one thing I used to talk about when it came to training was cannabis with intention. So there can be so many different intentions for you of using cannabis. Like you said, it could be earlier you gave the example of a child having seizures, or it could be to have fun and hang out with your friends. But it's kind of what you choose your intention to be with it. And I've seen people that have switched from drinking on a daily basis.
Oh, it's documented. It's documented.
Yeah. And there's that correlation with terpenes, like we like to talk about. But it's just truly amazing to see how there's so many different intentions, but they're all being met by this one thing. And yes, it is not, a blanket fix for everything, but to see how it can be used to help so many different things is truly, truly amazing. And just to see the positive effect it has on people's lives as well. And I'm sure, if you spend a decent amount of time in a shop, especially medical shops, and watching patients come in and seeing how they're trying something new to help a different ailment, and then when they finally find that thing that works, it's just like all the lights go on.
Right.
And it's truly a beautiful kind of moment that you get to witness.
And it's there, and it's legal, and it's tested, and guess what? It's not addictive, or you're gonna, it can't kill you if you take too many. On so many levels, it is exactly as you say. It's an opportunity for a new kind of avenue of self-healing and all the rest. So it's been my experience, and I think that pretty much is across the board in cannabis, as well as the business side of it. And again, balancing the two, which we've talked about a lot here. And to me, it's boundlessly interesting, because I'm old enough to understand when it was really in the shadows, and it was really unhealthy, and it was really dangerous, and you didn't know who you were dealing with. And now for those that will approach it in this way, it's walk into your dispensary, walk into ours. It's warm, it's welcoming, it's knowledgeable, it's low pressure, it's here to educate, and if this works for you, we're here to provide. And if it doesn't, as that couple came that left that review, we had no intention of buying, but we felt that there was real integrity to what they were trying to do, and to me that was a home run for our business.
Yeah, and I think too, it's even if they didn't buy anything, it's destigmatizing it, right? It's making it so it's a welcoming place for you to come into, where you can ask questions, and you're not pressured to buy anything, because I think sometimes people get a little nervous thinking that you're going to get pressured into buying something or something that you're not comfortable using or don't want. But to be able to say, hey, like, we're just here to help inform you. We're here for whatever you need is really, really special.
Yep. Yeah, I suppose every retail store has its particular approach, but in cannabis there is only one, and that is, it's a cliche, but you're all ears when you're listening, and then you go from there. And we do try to put products in front of them we think will help. As I say, we want to hear back from as many as are going to be coming by again to tell us what they learned, because this is an evolving operation, and nobody knows everything about cannabis. It's too complicated. It's too rich with possibility. But little pieces are coming to the fore of understanding. You mentioned terpenes, for example. I knew nothing about terpenes, but now I know that we might put out we might have a harvest of, we talked about some of the blueberry strains. For those that are listening, they might say, yeah, we like to go in a store and you get the 30% THC or whatever. And that's become kind of the magic benchmark. If you get over that, you can get at a certain price point and all that kind of, that sort of hard information that you have to think about in business. But if you have what's quote unquote a low testing blueberry, but, low of like what in my day, it would have been 10 times more powerful, which is something that everyone needs to understand, by the way, if you're coming into it new, as I did after, 40 years of not
the THC percentage
is way up there, and it needs to be understood. On the other hand, now we understand terpenes. You can have a plant, a strain, a harvest that tests at, let's say, in the high teens, but you get to the terpenes of 1, 2, even 3% or more, and you get an aesthetic component to your experience, which can affect it's psychoactive results, as well as just the taste and those superficial aesthetics. But I never understood that before, and now, and in organics, it's particularly, it seems, and I can't prove this scientifically, but as I see our crops as they come forward, I see the terpenes consistently strong. I think the organics must have something to do with that. When you're only organic inputs, no salts, anything like that. Yeah. For our organic Green Meadows line, we have other lines that are not, but on that one, I see the terpenes as consistently strong, and I think there's something there that recommends it, particularly for more experienced users that can say, I can if I need to just get really high, I can find a strain that will do that. But if I want to be in a little bit more of a kind of an aesthetic, kind of let all of my senses kind of take in what I'm going through here and what I'm experiencing and why I like cannabis, the terpenes are part of it. So again, it's right in line with the medical understanding, the business understanding, what rec means, what is recreational. What recreational is still wellness, which is still medicine. So I always think that's where, that's what recreational, or as we say in Massachusetts, adult use meets medical under the wellness kind of nomenclature, and wellness is medicine as well. So that's where all of these things, terpenes, understanding cannabis, will come together. And every day we're in this business, we become more conversant in those kinds of understandings.
Yeah. Well, and also too, I constantly make the argument that most recreational customers are patients to a degree, whether they know it or not, or maybe they don't want to be put on a list like we've talked about, or they don't know how to get a med card, they don't know how to access that. Right. So it's like, I think it's important to remember that mindset that it's wellness, and to go off of what you said earlier too, when it comes to the terpenes and you all being organic, is terpenes are naturally produced by the plant as a defense mechanism. Right. But when you're not having all these different additives to it, it gives the plant a chance to naturally produce those because they're naturally fighting the normal elements they would. So I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up.
Well, it's the biology of the plant, and I think that, for those of us that would go to a hamburger joint, well, we don't study the biology of beef necessarily, right? But the biology of cannabis is still interesting, even to the most casual recreational user. When they talk about it, they find it interesting, and that enhances their experience as well. They're not just going to go home and strike up a pre-roll. They might say, "Oh, this pre-roll is pretty interesting. This has got X amount of terpenes in it, and I'm going to try." And again, this is what the industry. And this is the advantage of a new industry because everything is knowledge. Everything is brand new education, including for the veterans of the industry that have been doing it. Like there are people that work for us that have, been working, and even when it was illegal. And we've worked with many partners now that have come out of the shadows. You mentioned Gentlemen Smugglers. There's a famous, worked outside the law, and now here he is, a great partner of ours and of yours. And Barry Foy, who's there, is just, again, this is what I love about the industry, because the road to you and me sitting together in a room was very, very unlikely. Yet here we are, and having a chat. And boy, oh boy, those are good moments.
No, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, I remember when I did the Barry interview, I never thought I'd sit across the table from someone who's considered a drug kingpin. I was like, oh my God, this is happening. I didn't realize that. And now, I was a big history buff growing up. I loved history, loved studying the different wars. I was a U.S. history and government major. So then they're like, yeah, you're going to do an interview with Bob Patton, who's related to, wait, this is really cool. And it's like, but you wouldn't think that this would normally happen.
Right.
And I've gotten to meet, people up in Maine that I never thought I would have met before. Or I met a cannabis lawyer the other day that's worked in every single state except for Maine and Oregon, which I thought was very interesting. That the two ends of the two bookends, that
both
have Portland's in them. Hasn't operated in those states, but every other cannabis state he has. So it's all these people that you never would have thought. Meeting Nambi Tosh, like, who would have thought?
Yes. Well, you're seeing athletes now. Yeah. I mean, the NBA is kind of leading the way there, to where cannabis should not be sort of a disqualifier. And again, these are the little and law enforcement coming to understand it as well. We met with Rob and I had a chat with a municipal. A bunch of policemen, and actually they were on SWAT teams in their municipality, and they were talking to us about what we talked about with PTSD, because they have it as well, and the fact that the cannabis they can't get near it, right? And I understand that, but that's going to have to be worked out, as we move forward. How are we going to integrate? And in the military and all that, this is something that I don't have the answer to it either. Where does cannabis fit into a professional work and all? That's just something that we're going to have to feel our way forward. And one thing you can't do is come in with a predetermined position, because you're going to find out that there's more to the story. And that's the tale of cannabis. There's more to the story wherever you look.
And I mean, cannabis, I think a lot of us in the industry try and constantly fight cannabis being compared to alcohol, but at the same time we have to remember that, hey, if we want to assimilate it into our lives, kind of like alcohol is, to a degree we are comparing it, because if you are in the military or if you are a police officer, you're allowed to drink alcohol on your off hours.
Right.
If you operate heavy machinery or anything like that. So how do we correlate that?
Yes.
Without over comparing them at the same time, because they are very different things.
These are things that are yet to be determined in front of us, and to whatever extent we can help with that conversation. And again, you're going to be as much a part of it, because you are, in the forefront of what you're doing here and in Boston, and we're out there out in the burbs. Again, we're all trying to kind of put more data on the table and more experiences on the table. And again, if someone says, oh, I see an issue with this in profession or driving or whatever, I don't say, oh, that's crazy, it's fine. No, you listen and you say, you know what, that's a fair point. We're working it out this way. We're working with law enforcement. We're working to make sure, as I said, we support drug education in the schools, and which would seem, counterintuitive, but no, it's absolutely in sync with what we're trying to do. And all of these things, and we can't presume to have answers to some of these really hard questions, but I do know when I see, with legalization, teen alcohol use goes down. Now, again, I shouldn't say teen, above 21. We know teens drink, and unfortunately they get a hold of cannabis too, but they don't get a hold of it legally from our stores, right? Yeah. And that's and we are in the forefront of making sure they don't get it anywhere. So these are the things that we are starting to learn how to kind of calibrate, understand, and go forward with real knowledge for when the deciders step in, legislative or whatever, we can at least give them real information and help them.
We're contributing to those studies that are happening right now too. So I know the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, that one came out with the study a few months ago, talking about how there was no correlation with an uptick in teen use with adult use states coming to market or laws.
Quite the contrary.
Exactly. And so I took it a step further, and there's a huge survey that went out that they do about every 10 years, I believe, on drug use in adolescents. And going through that, what they saw essentially was there was no uptick. What they saw was kids that did use cannabis previously they were still using it, and that rate might have gone up, but they didn't see a rate of new users. So it was very interesting. But at least you know that the ones that are using it, hopefully, you know, maybe, I'm not saying that, you know, you never want your kids to get into your cannabis, but at least when you have legal establishments on the market, you know it's not being laced. You know all of these different things, but to be able to say, hey, like, in these states, we're operating in these states, we're the ones that have helped make sure that kids aren't getting a hold of this. And, you know, even when you have your community outreach meetings to get licenses in different towns, that's one thing parents are always concerned about, is they don't want their kids to get a hold of it, which is very, very understandable. But to be able to now show this data of, hey, there isn't an uptick in adolescent use. There isn't, you know, it isn't leading to kids using more nicotine vapes or kids using more alcohol. This is what we're actually seeing instead. And 5-6 years ago, we didn't have that data. Right.
The point is, I think, and what you're saying is, because you're going to see a whole bunch of other statistics with someone, and I'm always, I say, I want to hear them. You know, I don't want to dismiss them. Oh, you're crazy. You know, look at our statistics, everything. You have to respect the other side and say, we're going to work through this. But again, I start with the idea, okay, 21 and up, number one. Number two, the drug education. Number three, all the things that you say, where teen use goes down and alcohol use among, 21 and up is even going down in areas because there's less of a cost to drink, 10 beers at night. You know, let's take what we would say would be the contradictory statistics, of which there's some, although I think the preponderance is showing that this is not, the sky didn't fall, and there's a way to integrate this in a healthy way through society. And bottom line, though, it's here, and it's been here for generations. I remember someone saying, well, I'm worried it's going to be in the middle school. It's already in the middle school, so let's make sure. And again, Seed, Green Meadows, other companies, we are part of our obligation legally, but part of our desire is to get out there and to make sure that law enforcement knows we're on their side, that the schools know we're on their side, that we can go and present to middle schoolers or go and present to high schoolers and say, sorry kids, no go, and here's why, and you push it forward. And when you have that credibility of, in a sense, talking against your own product, but doing so because it's the right thing to do, just ethically, and so I always just try to approach the arguments that are put forward, and they're fewer and fewer, as we all know.
No, for sure.
But as they come with respect and say, these are things that we have to be conscious of, and it's an industry. Agreed. So I take your points and I listen to them. On the other hand, we ain't going nowhere but forward. And so that's how you have to do it.
And I think too, you also have the room to say, hey, I can't do exactly what you want me to do, but this is what I can do to help ease how you feel.
It's called compromise. It's called compromise and conversation, and there ain't enough of it around. But it is happening in cannabis by necessity, by law, and also by the desire of those of us in the industry. We know that it's important, so we're here to do it. And we approach it as medicine. We approach it as a legal matter. We approach it as an agricultural challenge sometimes, and we approach it as fun. And you got to mingle all three, otherwise, why do it?
No, I agree with you. Well, I think our time's almost done, but I want to ask you one question.
Let fly.
We leave. So, what would you say your favorite way to consume is, and what is your favorite product on the market right now?
Okay, I am a kind of, I live in the 5 milligram. Usually edible, like a gummy or a mint, that kind of thing. And for me, as I was mentioning, in the evening, traditionally I would sit down at the end of my work time, say I was writing or whatever, or we're doing cannabis work, which is plenty of that. Let's say it's 6 o'clock and I'm going to put my feet up on the table, and my wife's going to roll her eyes, his feet's on the table, and I'll have a couple of fingers of scotch, right? Well, now it's going to be a 5 milligram and a glass of wine or something. And that's it. It's not so much for the buzz, because it's very minute. You don't even really feel it unless you kind of get up and you have that sort of disembodiment. Oh, it's here again, and and that's obviously what you sort of like, that otherness that it can bring. So that's really where I live, and there are different products that meet that. We have gummies. There's 10 in a pack. There's 100 milligram maximum, and then you can have or 20 in a pack, and so it's 5 milligrams a piece. I might one of those. If I want to blow it out, I might take 2. That's kind of what my products are, and there are we're not doing gummies, so I'll have that. Occasional I'll vape. I've had to draw on a couple of joints, but it's really not my thing, and I'm more in the edible space, and it's just where my comfort zone is. If I'm going to go, I love live music. I play guitar. I love the blues and all that. So if I go see that, rather than sit there and while I'm watching, drink 4 beers, I'll just take an edible beforehand and I'll enjoy the show, and I'll have a Diet Coke. It's just a different way to bring it into my particular lifestyle. So that's, I hope that answered your question. That's sort of where I live. But again, I'm always interested to talk to our team. The tank, the 1 gram, people love that. And obviously I tried it, and 1 draw, 2 draw for me, it puts me just in the right place, and I do like the otherness. I do like the disembodiment of cannabis a little bit. When I write, and now that I had to put it down for quite a while, but when I would write, sometimes that disembodiment, if you write during the day, let's say you knocked out as Hemingway used to say, give me 500 words, Lord, today. So if you get 500 words down, if you're in it, you kind of don't see it anymore until you're writing yourself. And it can be on an expository thing. You could be writing an essay or an article. And I'm sure any writer or journalist can say the same. If you live in that piece, you don't see it. You don't see like the typos sometimes, and you don't see because your eyes have crossed it. And if you have a cannabis, sort of that little disembodiment, and you can pick it up and you can read your own work that you've been working on all day with a little bit of a remove, and you can have a different perspective on it. Mm-hmm. So that, I find it sometimes it's helpful in that way, to give me a little bit to sort of make me a disinterested reader rather than someone that's been sweat and blood over these words all day. So it can help in a very practical way, unexpectedly so sometimes. So there's different ways. Again, this is just how Bob Patton integrates his particular interest in cannabis. Someone else might say there's nothing better for me than a nice bong. So let it roll. I'm all for it. We can take care of Green Meadows and seed. We got you covered.
Oh, we definitely do. I mean, let me tell you, I love. Green Meadows has the Hell on Wheels CBD strain. I love that one because I find that I can use it during the day, but it's relaxing and it's not too heady for me or anything like that. But it's one of my favorite go-tos. It
is a good one. It was our first 1-to-1 combination, and which they really, you do feel the CBD side of it. The anti-inflammatory, the relaxant side, and I'm a big believer in CBD. I think it's abused a lot. I think you get a lot of kind of people are your local drugstore, your 7-Eleven, whatever. Nothing against 7-Eleven, but who knows what they're saying, it's CBD and all the rest. But when you see real CBD, and I'll mention Patent Reserve, which is that almost 3,000 milligrams of really extracted and put together with real care, and you take a tiny bit, and you really do feel that work through your system, not in terms of your headspace, but rather just a kind of a general sense of the whether it's the direct anti-inflammatory capabilities or just a kind of a general body feeling of whatever CBD can do. Those are real. And the Hell on Wheels, which was our first one. Do you know the story of Hell on Wheels? Hell on Wheels is the name, the kind of the nickname of the 2nd Armored Division. That name came to it in World War II, and it was actually commanded before World War II by my grandfather, General George S. Patton Jr., for those that don't remember the beginning of our conversation. I'm related to the man as his grandson, accident of birth, but proud to say it. So he commanded the 2nd Armored Division in 1941, 42, but really before he went and got big in World War II. Mm-hmm. And the nickname of the 2nd Armored Division was Hell on Wheels. Okay. My father, also many years later, when he got his 2nd star and became a major general, he was given command of the 2nd Armored Division, which at the time was based down at Fort Hood, Texas. It still is. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time in American military history that a father and son had commanded the same division. So that was kind of cool. Well, don't you know, because Hell on Wheels is a strain that we did not. It's not a Green Meadows strain, so it's not proprietary. So it was already named. Yep. And it came in as Hell on Wheels, and I said, "You got to be kidding me! This is like a storied name." And so now our first 1-to-1 CBD THC product, Hell on Wheels, actually by pure chance reflects the name of the 2nd Armored Division, which, by the way, was commanded by my father and his father, and ain't life strange? That's the theme of that story. It is funny, and sometimes it makes you look over your shoulder and say, maybe there's a little bit to the universe that makes these things work with some degree of what's the synchronicity or coincidence or whatever. And I'm happy to acknowledge that in the case of Hell on Wheels, that was what happened.
That's
So
really, really
it's
cool.
again, it's a story that just comes out of nowhere and becomes part of your lore.
Yep.
And we've got a bunch of them, and not all of them are hellish. A lot of them are terrifically fun and gratifying, and today was one of them. And I really appreciate the invitation to come and chat.
Oh, of course, no. And we appreciate you for coming in. I know we've had Rob on the podcast
Yep.
before. We've had Barry on the podcast.
Barry and Rob, yep.
We love working with you all. We love your products. We love your team. You're some of the great partners that we have at Seed, but just great people to know in
Yep.
the industry. Always fun seeing you all out at events, and it's really nice to be able to all come together and get to talk like this too.
Yeah, well, I'll say, and you have to take it as truth. When I was heading over here, and Rob was telling me you're going to go to Seed, and he said you're going to meet Elise Juan, and she's awesome, quote unquote. And I can testify that she's awesome. So I want to thank you very, very much again, and to your whole team here, very welcoming, and can't wait to spread the word.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we'll definitely be spreading the word about Green Meadows.
Oh, the wonderful things at Green Meadows. Oh, it's all right. We've had a long chat, but it's flown by, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Me as well.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
You got it. All right.
Awesome.
Take care. We'll shake hands, and we'll go
too.
from there.
Yes.
Okay. It was a lot of fun.
Yes. We appreciate your listenership to this episode and extend our gratitude to our special guest, Bob Patton, and Green Meadows, whose products can be found at Seed in Jamaica Plain. Seed Your Head is a co-production of the Seed Cannabis Market and the Core Cannabis Museum. You can find episode transcripts and more at our website, www.seedyourhead.com. We'd also love to see you in person at our location in Jamaica Plain, Boston. Core Cannabis is a 501c3 nonprofit museum, and all donations that are made are tax deductible. For more information on donations and sponsorship, please check out our website.